Close Encounters of the Third Kind wasn't just science fiction, it was Steven Spielberg channeling childhood terror into wonder. These are 20 hidden details you completely missed in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Number 20. Spielberg wanted to call it "Watch the Skies." The phrase came from The Thing from Another World, the final warning shouted before credits rolled. Columbia Pictures executive John Veitch hated it immediately. Too vague, they said, too forgettable, generic in a market flooded with sci-fi cheapies trying to ride Star Wars momentum. Spielberg refused to back down until he found something better. He turned to J. Allen Hynek, the astronomer who'd spent decades investigating UFO reports for Project Blue Book. Hynek had developed a classification system for sightings. Close Encounters of the First Kind meant seeing a UFO. Second kind involved physical evidence. Third kind meant contact with occupants, direct interaction with something not human. Spielberg borrowed the terminology wholesale, and the title became iconic. Number 19. The Mexican desert sequence opens with scientists discovering aircraft that vanished decades earlier. Flight 19, the squadron lost over the Bermuda Triangle in 1945, sitting perfectly preserved under blazing sun. Spielberg based the entire opening on his childhood nightmares about objects appearing where they shouldn't exist. He grew up obsessed with Bermuda Triangle stories. The idea of things frozen in time, removed from history, and then returned haunted him through adolescence. Production designer Joe Alves found actual vintage planes and trucked them into the Sonoran Desert for the shoot. The heat was unbearable during filming in Mexico, but Spielberg insisted on authenticity. He wanted the planes to look real because the terror had always felt real to him. Childhood dread became the film's opening statement. Number 18. Spielberg wanted Carl Sagan to play Claude Lacombe, the French scientist leading the investigation. Sagan was an astronomer at Cornell University, a public intellectual, someone who could lend the film credibility just by appearing on screen. Spielberg approached him directly through intermediaries. Sagan declined politely, but offered advice. Hire a filmmaker instead, he suggested, someone who understands obsession. Spielberg then pursued Francois Truffaut, a French New Wave director who'd made the 400 Blows and Jules and Jim. Truffaut had never acted in an American production. His English was limited. He needed interpreter Francois Porcil on set for most conversations, but his quiet intensity translated perfectly to Lacombe's character. Truffaut brought gravity to scenes that could have felt like exposition, turning limitation into authenticity. Number 17. John Williams brought several melodic options to early story meetings at Universal Studios. Complex orchestral phrases meant to sound alien yet comprehensible. Spielberg rejected everything. Too complicated, he said. Communication requires simplicity, something a child could remember and repeat. Williams went home frustrated. His young son Joseph was practicing piano in the living room, playing random sequences of notes. One pattern caught Williams's attention. 5 notes, evenly spaced, simple enough to hum after one hearing. Williams recognized it immediately as exactly what Spielberg needed. He brought the melody back the next day to the production office. Spielberg agreed within seconds. 5 notes became the film's communication language, the bridge between human and alien intelligence, establishing universal connection. Number 16. Spielberg didn't want Close Encounters dismissed as fantasy. He hired J. Allen Hynek as technical consultant, the same Northwestern University astronomer whose classification system inspired the title. Hynek had investigated thousands of UFO reports for the Air Force during Project Blue Book's 2-decade run. He knew what witnesses described, how sightings unfolded, what details repeated across testimonies from people who'd never met. Hynek reviewed the script at Columbia Pictures and made specific suggestions. The lights shouldn't behave predictably. Witnesses should feel confused before they feel afraid. Contact should seem accidental, not strategic. His notes grounded the film in patterns documented by actual investigators. Hynek even appears in the final landing sequence, standing among the scientists watching the mothership descend at Devil's Tower. Number 15. Steve McQueen was Spielberg's first choice for Roy Neary. McQueen passed immediately through his agent Marvin Josephson. He told representatives he couldn't cry convincingly on camera. The role required emotional vulnerability he didn't think he could deliver. Dustin Hoffman was approached next after coming off Marathon Man. Hoffman declined for reasons never made public, though rumors suggested he found Roy's obsession unsympathetic. Richard Dreyfuss wasn't Spielberg's top pick after collaborating on Jaws, but once cast, he became irreplaceable. Dreyfuss brought manic energy that made Roy's descent feel real. The dinner table breakdown, the dirt piled in the living room. Dreyfuss played obsession as compulsion, something Roy couldn't control even as he watched it destroy everything around him. Number 14. Spielberg researched documented sighting reports from Project Blue Book archives before choosing filming locations. The highway sequence where Roy first encounters the UFO was shot near areas in Wyoming where multiple witnesses had reported unexplained lights to local authorities. The Indiana scenes matched Midwestern sighting patterns Hynek had cataloged during his Air Force consulting years. Spielberg wanted geographical authenticity even if audiences never consciously noticed the connection. He believed location accuracy would subconsciously reinforce believability through familiar American landscapes. Production coordinator Clark Palo scouted based on UFO databases maintained by civilian research groups. Crew members joked about the absurdity of planning a Hollywood film around unverified sighting reports, but Spielberg insisted the strangeness had to feel rooted in real highways and farmland. Number 13. The dinner table breakdown wasn't scripted in detail by writer Paul Schrader. Spielberg told Dreyfuss to improvise something showing Roy's mental unraveling during the family meal sequence. He wanted visual evidence of obsession, something the family could witness in real time. Dreyfuss grabbed the mashed potatoes and started sculpting without planning the moment beforehand. Spielberg loved it immediately. He kept the entire take without cuts, preserving Dreyfuss's raw performance. The scene became shorthand for compulsion overriding reason throughout popular culture. Roy can't explain why he's building a mountain out of dinner. He just knows he has to. The image is burned into his mind from the UFO encounter. The improvisation worked because it required no dialogue to convey mental collapse. Number 12. Spielberg needed a landmark that felt sacred without explanation for the climactic sequence. He considered several natural formations, including Mount Shasta, before settling on Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The site holds spiritual significance for multiple Native American tribes, including the Lakota and Cheyenne nations. It rises dramatically from flat plains like a geological anomaly, something that shouldn't exist but does. Spielberg said it looked otherworldly without special effects or matte paintings. Production spent weeks filming around the monument under National Park Service supervision, capturing it at different times of day. The Park Service initially resisted the film crew after reading initial location requests. They worried Spielberg would damage the site or disrespect its cultural importance to indigenous peoples, requiring careful negotiations. Number 11. Douglas Trumbull's effects team at Future General Corporation constructed the alien mothership as a massive practical model. Computer-generated imagery wasn't sophisticated enough in 1977 to create something that complex for major motion pictures. The model was covered in hundreds of small details inspired by oil refineries Trumbull photographed, lights embedded across every surface to create depth and texture. Trumbull used fiber optics, neon tubing, and airplane landing lights scavenged from aircraft suppliers to make the ship glow convincingly. Filming required precise choreography between camera operator Dennis Murin and lighting technicians. The mothership's descent was shot in segments at the Future General warehouse, each pass capturing different lighting layers that were composited later through optical printing. The practical approach gave the ship physical presence. Number 10. Early screen tests at Universal Studios filmed children in alien costumes designed by Carlo Rambaldi to see how they moved. Spielberg quickly realized human children moved too much like humans despite costume modifications. Body language gave them away instantly. Gestures, posture, the way they turned their heads revealed human skeletal structure, all recognizably human despite costumes and makeup designed to obscure their features. Spielberg scrapped the approach after reviewing dailies with editor Michael Kahn and hired mime artists and dancers instead. Professionals trained in movement could create patterns audiences hadn't seen before in science fiction cinema. Fluid gestures that suggested different skeletal structures, different ways of processing space and gravity beyond human limitation. The final aliens moved slowly, deliberately, without sudden gestures that would betray human origin. Number 9. Terry Garr played Ronnie Neary, Roy's wife, who watches him spiral into obsession after the highway encounter. Garr openly disliked the character for years after release in magazine interviews and talk show appearances. She felt Ronnie was written as a one-dimensional obstacle, a woman who couldn't understand her husband's vision quest. The role gave her no agency beyond resisting Roy's breakdown at the dinner table. Garr called the part frustrating when speaking with Gene Siskel in 1980. Ronnie had no arc, no complexity, no interior life beyond reacting to Roy's increasingly erratic behavior. Spielberg later acknowledged during DVD commentary that he wrote domestic scenes from Roy's perspective exclusively, that focus unintentionally flattened Ronnie into someone blocking the protagonist rather than someone with legitimate concerns. Number 8. Close Encounters was written during Watergate's aftermath under the shadow of Richard Nixon's resignation. Public trust in government had collapsed after the Washington Post investigations. Spielberg deliberately wove conspiracy into the narrative, reflecting cultural anxiety about what institutions hide from citizens. The military's fake toxic spill evacuation mirrored fears about manufactured crises used to control populations near Devil's Tower. Spielberg said Watergate made audiences receptive to stories where authority figures lie systematically to maintain social order. The film tapped into that moment when conspiracy theories felt less like paranoia and more like pattern recognition. The cover-up wasn't treated as villainous by screenwriter Paul Schrader. The film presents it as pragmatic. Officials believe people can't handle alien contact truth, so they manage information flow. Number 7. The original theatrical release in November 1977 ran 135 minutes. Columbia executive David Begelman pressured Spielberg in 1980 to create a special edition with new footage for theatrical re-release. The studio wanted scenes inside the mothership to justify re-release marketing campaigns. Spielberg agreed, but demanded the right to trim scenes he now considered too slow after distance from production. The special edition added mothership interior sequences showing Roy walking through alien architecture with Bob Balaban's character. Spielberg later regretted including those scenes during retrospective interviews. They answered questions better left mysterious. In 1998, he released a director's cut that removed the mothership interior and restored his original vision with minor adjustments approved by Columbia. All 3 cuts remain in circulation. Number 6. The sequence where Barry is taken from his home wasn't Spielberg's invention from imagination. He based it on testimonies compiled by J. Allen Hynek from people claiming abduction experiences documented in Project Blue Book files. Details came from documented reports Spielberg read during pre-production research at Columbia Pictures. Lights flooding through windows, objects moving independently. Spielberg wanted the abduction to feel like transcendence, not horror like previous alien films. That reframing changed how audiences understood alien contact in cinema. The scene walks a careful line between wonder and menace, as Melinda Dillon's character watches helplessly while Carrie Guffey, playing young Barry, responds with innocent curiosity. Cinematographer Vilmos Jigman used practical lighting effects to create the otherworldly glow flooding through the rural Indiana home. Number 5. Early drafts by screenwriter Paul Schrader ended with Roy watching the mothership leave from Devil's Tower. He'd sacrificed everything for a glimpse he couldn't fully process or integrate into normal life. No boarding the ship, no transcendence, just a broken man returning home to ruins he'd created chasing something beyond comprehension. Spielberg eventually decided that the ending felt too bleak during script revisions with producer Julia Phillips. He wanted optimism, not tragedy for mass audiences. So Roy boards the ship, choosing the unknown over everything familiar and safe. The ending reflected Spielberg's belief in exploration over safety before fatherhood. Spielberg later said becoming a father changed his perspective on Roy's choice. In interviews during the 80s with American Film Magazine, he admitted he could no longer relate. Number 4. Spielberg didn't explain the plot to child actors during production at Mobile, Alabama sound stages. He especially kept young Carrie Guffey, who played Barry, unaware they were filming alien contact sequences. Instead, he told them through assistant director Jim Bloom they were playing games with lights and sounds. During the abduction scene, Spielberg used bright lights and wind machines operated by effects supervisor Roy Arbogast to provoke genuine wonder. Guffey's wide-eyed expressions weren't performance coached by acting teachers. They were real reactions to stimuli he didn't understand at age 3. Spielberg wanted authentic surprise, not rehearsed emotion from child performers. By keeping the children uninformed about story context, he captured responses no acting could replicate convincingly. The camera captured discovery in real time during single takes. Number 3. John Williams didn't just compose the melody at his Los Angeles studio. He arranged versions using different cultural instruments to emphasize universality beyond Western musical traditions. Synthesizers, orchestral instruments, human voices from multiple ethnic backgrounds. He wanted the theme to feel like something transcending human culture entirely, according to recording session notes. Williams believed communication with alien intelligence would require language understood instinctively rather than learned through education systems. The 5 notes became that language during the Devil's Tower sequence. Simple enough for anyone to repeat, complex enough to carry meaning across species. The film uses multiple arrangements during the landing sequence conducted by Williams himself. Scientists play the melody one way through ARP 2500 synthesizers. The mothership responds differently through electronic processing, creating conversation. Number 2. Becoming a father changed how Spielberg viewed Roy's choice to abandon his family. In interviews with Tony Crawley after his children were born, he admitted he couldn't relate anymore to someone abandoning family for transcendence. The ending that once felt triumphant began feeling selfish from a parental perspective. Spielberg said if he'd made the film after having kids with actress Amy Irving, Roy wouldn't board the ship. He'd watch it leave and return home, choosing family over wonder and cosmic exploration. That shift reveals how personal circumstances reshape artistic priorities over decades. The film captures idealism Spielberg later outgrew after marriage and fatherhood responsibilities. The regret doesn't diminish the film's artistic achievement. It contextualizes it as a younger artist's belief system frozen in celluloid celluloid. Number 1. When Spielberg approached the military through official Department of Defense liaison offices for production assistance, they initially agreed. Equipment, consultation, access to bases for location shooting, then they read the script submitted by Columbia Pictures. The Pentagon pulled support entirely without public explanation through official channels. They were uncomfortable with government cover-up portrayals and secret alien contact scenarios that painted military officials as deceptive. Spielberg took their withdrawal as validation according to production memos. If the military wanted distance from the story, maybe he was touching something real about classified programs. Their refusal to cooperate became part of the film's mystique among UFO researchers. It fed conspiracy theories the movie explored. The Pentagon never commented publicly on why they backed out despite media inquiries. Close Encounters of the Third Kind didn't predict our obsession with the unknown. It codified how we imagine contact might feel. Not invasion, but invitation. Not terror, but transcendence, calling ordinary people toward extraordinary destiny. Spielberg built a film trusting wonder over spectacle, obsession over explanation, and left audiences staring at the sky longer after leaving theaters. Which hidden detail surprised you most, and what classic should we explore next?